Welcome to Competitive CX, the podcast for financial services professionals tackling client experience challenges. If you're passionate about enhancing client experience and driving client satisfaction, you found your new favorite show.
I'm Grainger, and alongside Melanie Aimer and Hamish, we delve into essential CX strategies and innovations that are shaping the future of client experience in finance.
With our diverse backgrounds in customer experience and financial services, we're going to bring you some real-world insights and thought-provoking discussions to help you navigate the complexities of delivering exceptional client experiences.
Whether you're a decision maker, a marketer, or anyone in a client-facing role in financial services, you'll find valuable takeaways to elevate your organizational CX strategies.
So come on then, subscribe now and join us in transforming client experience and gaining that competitive edge.
Let's dive in. Good morning, afternoon, or evening to wherever you all are. Welcome to our podcast series called Competitive CX. Now, you would have heard in our last episode, we discussed solving the most common client experience complaints. And today, our last final episode, we're going to talk about where do you even start with client experience? My name is Melanie Aimer, and for the last 20 years, I've been championing the role of client experience within the different areas of financial services, from capital markets, asset management, private banking, and wealth management. And you must have heard me say before, if you've joined our series, that I'm not satisfied in general, that the financial services organization is really cracking the challenges of creating great client experiences. And I'm joined by two fantastic, very experienced innovators who are already making a huge impact in the financial services industry. Firstly, Hamish Taylor, welcome.
Thank you, Melanie. Great to see you again. I like the irony of the fact that it's our last episode and we're co-creating it. How do you start? Which I think is quite an interesting.
I know. So Hamish, you're an award-winning former CEO whose world-leading customer-led transformation approach has inspired hundreds of companies across 48 countries to rethink their customer approach. And he's been dubbed the master thief for his track record of transferring ideas from one sector to another. And we've also got Adam Grainger. Adam, welcome.
Thank you very much. Always great to be here with you guys.
So, Adam, you head up a company called Accomplish that's pioneered the measurement and understanding of the key drivers of a great client experience that has really helped asset managers think about pinpointing where their CX either out or underperforms. And you're going to be bringing that thinking for the wider financial services community. So if you're listening to us, we welcome your views and thoughts. Do please leave us a comment and do rate and review the episode for us if you don't mind. That allows other people to also see or hear this episode and the whole series. So we really do hope you enjoy the whole podcast series. Now, today we're going to talk about where do you start with client experience. Now, this is the one I'm going to start off with because I get passionate about this area before I hand over to you guys. So I've often gone into organizations, whether it be in capital markets, asset management, private banking, wealth management, and started with that blank piece of paper. Where do you start? And the first place to start is building that business case. And what I've done is I often take and I use all the data that exists within the company already, whether that be client satisfaction data, the complaints data, but then I also marry it up with, and Adam, and some of the work that you do as well, I marry it up with where do you see outflows or where do you see money leaking? Where can you see behaviors that you're losing your customers or your clients? And then what I do is I tend to map that against every single one of the client journeys from beginning to end. And then I look at taking the feedback we get from our clients or our customers and then linking it back to where you see those leaking points. And that's how you build your business case. Because now what I've done is I've taken what can feel quite client experience, quite wide, quite fluffy, into quite concrete areas that need to be fixed, but also where you're losing P&L. And also what I'm doing is looking at where it's expensive to serve because you've messed up or you're duplicating. And you're creating experiences for clients and customers that are really difficult to engage with you on. And therefore, that must be costly for the organization as well. So I can use my business case to drive down cost, give it a case for how you increase revenues, but also have happier customers and clients. And I would also argue happier employees and colleagues as well. So that's where I would start. Then I would always make sure that to keep the conversation going, making sure that it's on the agenda point of the exco. I've always sat at the exco level so that we make sure client experience has the voice around that exco. That's really critical. You've got to make sure that you have on your standing agenda points, as you do with people, as you might do with risk, as you might do with your financials, you put on the standing agenda points, client experience. So you focus the whole exco leadership around client experience. And that's how you then start to think about what are the next steps you need to take to go and fix or improve, or where do you begin to even exceed clients' expectations, not only meet them, exceed client expectations so you can become innovative and start to beat the competition, or where you might want to frog leap the competition as well. So that's where I would start. Hamish, Adam, what do you think?
It was episode 1 or 2, I think, Hamish, when you said a phrase that I still remember, that a lot of boards look at all of their risks except one, and that's their biggest one, and that's customer risk. And then you said, and if you've got no customers, you've got no business. And,
and no risks, no other risks.
Boards and excos don't have the standing agenda item that client that Melanie mentioned. So let me jump in with what I would do. Some good, healthy overlap, Melanie, with the things that you've mentioned, but perhaps just a little bit more detail from the guy who likes to measure things. So let's have a look at that. When an organization gives me responsibility for CX, my immediate priority is to create alignment. Those are my words, Melanie, for what you're talking about when you talk about building the business case. So creating alignment on 3 things. 1, what is client experience? 2, why is it important? So sort of plain English words for creating that business case. And 3, our goals for it as an organization. So I'd like to quickly break those down as sort of 3 CX specific priorities. First, what is client experience? Well, one way of saying that is that's episode 2, guys. So let's do a quick recap of episode 2. CX is an effect that your company causes. That effect happens in what they say, that's subjective, and in what they do, and that's objective. Objective things are measurable, like Melanie was talking about, tangible, measurable, commercially actionable, not fluffy stuff. In the case of CX, it's measurable in time and money. I'm going to come back to that point in a moment because it doesn't get more commercial than that. Also in episode 2, CX is an ongoing end-to-end cross-functional coordination task. So what? This isn't just a recap. So what does that mean in terms of what I should do when I start? So my job, therefore, is when I'm given this responsibility, is to maintain or improve the coordination of what others are already doing. Okay, I'm performing a cross-functional coordination task. Using a car analogy and thinking of your standing agenda item on the exco, Melanie, my function is to be the dashboard from the perspective. How is the car running from the client's perspective? I'm going to come back to that point. This is why in practice, in my business, Accomplish, we see actually a lot of overlap between CX roles, CX teams, and business intelligence teams. Make sure that car dashboard exists and is being monitored. So that's my first one. I'm going to create alignment on what is CX. The second one I'm going to create alignment on is why is it important? Well, that's episode 1, why care about client experience. So let's refresh that before I draw some so whats from it. A focus on CX is vital because if your CX underperforms at engaging clients, they will give their time, but it will go to your competitors. And then guess what? That's where your money will go to. This objective measurability by the 2 rarest of commodities, time and money, makes CX a source of strategic competitive advantage. And crucially, it's entirely under your control. So what again? Well, if we're talking about time and money, this means my stakeholders are exactly as Melanie says, they're at the C-suite and the people that work for those chiefs of whatever. Specifically, they're in marketing, sales, service, and relationship management teams. This means I must get the heads of those areas on board and keep them informed, which in turn means I need their commitment to an executive CX dashboard. In my firm, Accomplish, we call it the CX scorecard, and that will show in one place, end to end, how well things are going for clients. So that's 2 out of 3 things I want to create alignment on. The third is our goals. What direction are we going in? What is the mark on the horizon that as an organization, our CX is heading? Well, if CX is an effect that we cause, then what effect do we want to have? Let's look at money first. What are our targets for getting clients to buy, sales conversion, to stay, client tenure, and to buy more products per client? Too many firms just focus on sales conversion, but doing that can give you a little bit of a bad reputation, too salesy, and can create an unnecessary blind spot to your biggest and cheapest sources of revenue, which are getting clients to stay and to buy more. Now let's have a look at time. To meet your financial goals, where along your pre and your post-sale experience do you want to either maintain or convert client engagement? Is your business very driven by social media, by email, by your website, through articles you publish, videos, podcasts, reports, meetings, events, or many or all of the above? Well, you need to figure this out, because combined, the time and money that you want to get from your clients, they will tell you the metrics that need to be on your dashboard. And to give you an idea of size for the large asset management firms that Accomplish serves, this results in a CX scorecard of only 30 metrics, end to end across big organizations. The 3 monetary ones, did they buy, stay, buy more, with the remainder being time related. And if benchmarking information exists in your sector, then use it, because it will tell you how you compare, and that will tell you your areas of strength and your areas for improvement. And without it, you're just comparing yourself against yourself, which is dangerous, because that's not how clients see you. They see you versus your peers, and your peers are constantly evolving.
And not only against financial services organizations as well. I mean, when I've got customer service, I'm thinking of, Amazon or Uber or other people as well as just.
Totally.
Absolutely. Especially when we look perhaps less so on the financial metrics, buying, staying and buying more will be different. But in terms of client engagement, they're just humans who also get on planes, so they will be displaying behaviors. So yes. And to recap, so to bring my sort of contribution on where I would start to a finish, I want to create alignment with my colleagues from the C-suite down on 3 things. What is client experience? Why is it important? What are our goals as an organization? If it's an effect, what effect do we want to have? How will we measure it? And where are our areas of strength and areas for improvement? Then how you address those areas for improvement becomes like any other change initiative. So we get into some sort of core skills there. That's where I start, guys. How about you, Hamish?
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess my starting point says, look, let's assume that, Melanie's put together her business case for all of this. And Adam, you've got everybody aligned around the measures and the goals and all that sort of stuff. I thought I'd talk a little bit more about then how you actually get started once you've got the case for getting started, if you like. Yeah, absolutely. And for me, if you look at the customer-led transformation model that Melanie mentioned, it's a sequence of actions that goes from customer insight, understanding the customer better than anybody else, creating a value proposition as a customer promise, so it's based on the benefit of the customer, and then how you turn that into new thinking and what it means for engagement. And there's only one place to start that journey, and that's with the customer. I mean, the clue's in the title. It's customer experience. Therefore, for me, the starting point for thinking about customer experience and getting started is how well you've understood your customer. And essentially, I mean, when I do this as a keynote at conferences, I talk about the 4 steps, and then I spend 50% of my time on step 1, customer insight. And you can see the production people panicking at this stage that, is he going to be 4 times as long as that or in trouble? No, the reason I spend half my time on 1 out of 4 is because it's the most important starting point of the 4. You need to be able to put, I said at one of the earlier episodes, you need to be able to really understand your customer deeper than anybody else. Put yourself in your customer's head, their state of mind. What is it? That's what you're trying to influence. And, your customer experience is only a reflection of how well you've really understood your customer's world. As I say, what's going on in their head. Like, you remember the Sainsbury's Bank example of understanding the mood people are in when they walk into Sainsbury's, or their levels of expectation, or understanding the customer's customer. What pressures are they on from elsewhere? There's a lot of things that we put into that episode where we talked about what you understand about customers. And that's the key. It's about them and their world. It's not about what we do. And I think the biggest mistake many organizations make when they start off with customer experience is they think of building a plan for customer experience based on what they're going to do for customers. That's the wrong starting point. Totally wrong. You've got to start with what what does success look like for your customer?
Sorry, just to jump in. I know you've got more to come. We're not good at that. We're very good at coming up with new financial gizmos. We like to call ourselves the financial services market, but really we're the financial products.
Oh yeah, we've got this great new product. How are we going to sell it to customers? We've got this great new piece of technology or whatever. Yeah. And what I would say then, the way to get around that is if you've got this great customer insight, you then create what I call the customer promise, which is your platform that you're going to use for designing the customer experience. And it identifies the customer benefit they get as a result of your excellence, not what success looks like, not you basically, is what it looks like for them. And you can build a kind of success map for the customer that says, in success terms, this is what it would look like for them in terms of, yes, a bit about the products and services they might want, but a lot about the kind of experience they might want and the hows, and then actually how you want them to feel at the end of it. And you can create from this a picture of what success looks like. And then you create a customer promise that basically says, that's what we need to do for customers. If you pick out the 2 or 3 most important things of this, and you make it single-minded, don't try and stand for everything. What specifically is going to differentiate you from the competition? It's got to be competitive. It's got to be deliverable, obviously. And so when you've identified that, what you're trying to achieve, or rather what success looks like for the customer, you then need to have the pieces in place to move forward. So that's start one of getting started, is get that customer promise right. So for the sake of what in the customer's world you are doing this. We know for the sake of what in our world we're doing it, but for the sake of what in the customer's world are you doing it? And then the second task is a bit more difficult because you're saying, look, with a good customer promise, it's easy then to start getting very excited about the opportunities we're going to bring to new markets and how we're going to change the way we engage with our customers and all that sort of stuff. But I would say stop and think before you rush into the new ideas and the engagement that can come from this. And don't be wrong, it is exciting to look for them. There's a preparation job that we need to do first. And that's how you get your organization ready to adopt the great ideas that we're going to bring forward. We're excited. The rest of the organization isn't yet. And this boils down to 3 areas that we really need to focus on, which have been touched on apart also already by Melanie Aimer. The first, and for me, it's leadership, culture, and tools. Leadership. It'll come as no surprise when I say, like everybody else has said all the way through these whole series, it starts at the top. When we looked at who owns CX, I talked about the need for the entire senior team to be on board and willing to champion this. You've heard the same thing again from both Adam and from Melanie. It's no good to anyone.
Very cultural as well.
Absolutely. It's no good to anyone if the executive team pay lip service to customer experience and then behave in a way that undermines this in the way they manage key initiatives or measure performance or whatever. And the other part of the leadership thing is your customer promise will normally have 2 or 3, maybe even 4 key pillars underneath it, which identify the key areas of success for a customer. If you remember the British Airways example I used previously, we talked about arrive ready for business was the goal for business travelers. But underneath that, there were 3 pillars: more sleep, less hassle, and refreshment. Okay. Your customer promise will have pillars like that, whatever they are. They may even be pillars of feelings in the work that Melanie and I did together. But each one of those needs to have an owner, somebody who's going to champion that across all of the disciplines, across all of the functions, and champion it through the organization. And also, it's just as important to have a champion on the exec team for each one of the pillars as well. And then you're really focusing on what's important. Sorry?
Those are measurable goals. You can measure refreshment.
Absolutely. But
that's what we're used to do.
But the key is you've got somebody in the organization who's thinking about one of those key customer goals and champion it through the organization. So that to me is the leadership piece that's important. Melanie, you're going to say something.
And this is where innovation can come about as well. I mean, you saw it with when you were at British Airways, didn't you? You had new services and new things happen as a result. We saw that in the work that we did together as well, where we found that actually by having that promise, you can start to think about where you exceed expectations rather than just meet the client's expectations and offer new services that you never even had thought of originally.
Yeah, because you're asking yourself a different question. When you design a customer promise, you're asking a question about the benefit to the customer and working backwards. So you're saying, how else could we help people arrive ready for business, to take the BA example? And you're right. By doing that, it means you ask a different question. And I mean, the work we did in financial services, Melanie, I remember we picked out 3 feelings actually that we were going to get the particular clients to think about. And then you could then say, okay, how else could you help establish that feeling in a client rather than starting with what we do today? And you're right. That's exactly how you drive the innovation. So leadership and how you do that is one thing, getting the organization ready. The second part of getting the organization ready is obviously culture. And what I'm saying, the reason I say that is because you've got to get the entire organization to understand the goals and principles of customer experience, not just the frontline staff. So you need to think very carefully about how you're going to launch this through the business. And I would argue very clearly, you must run some pilots with selected teams, probably non-customer facing teams as important as customer facing ones, and let them examine the customer promise and see what would it mean for me? What would it mean for my department? What would I need to do differently? And when you've got results from having done that, when you then create a launch event to take it out to everybody else, you've got some real examples you can show them as a way of creating the buzz that's going to go through the organization. So that's the culture piece. And then the third one I pick up on is tools. And I think there's two types of tools. There's tools that are those that ensure the customer experience becomes part of business as usual, which Melanie mentioned earlier. And that's about reporting mechanism, links to performance reviews, identification of gaps, the kind of analysis that Adam and his team can do, that sort of stuff that allows you to have the right understanding. But the second type of tools are the ones that make it easy for the team to deliver. And partly that might be about how you design your processes. It might be about communication flows, but it can also include even down to communication sound bites. I mean, there's famous stories, aren't there, of the Formula One motor racing teams where they'll sit in a meeting and somebody says, does it make the car go faster? And if it doesn't, let's stop talking about it and let's talk about something that does. You know, you can create things like that as part of your tool set to actually get everybody thinking about and talking about it. And anything that can help your colleagues to make the first steps on this new journey, you can give them tools to help. I mean, my favorite British Airways one story you've heard me tell before, Melanie, was the one about the cabin baggage. When if you want to help, control cabin baggage, and you ask your check-in staff to do it, you're giving them a horrible job because everybody comes on with bags that are too big and thinks they can sneak them on board somehow, hidden over the shoulder, right behind the back, walk up to the check-in desk as if you're carrying this lightweight small bag, Really, so you brought the mainframe with you. Have a look at the size of that. It's tough, okay? So the boxes that you've seen at airports were introduced not actually as a way of making money like the low-cost airlines have often used them. They were actually aimed as a tool to make it easy for the check-in staff. Listen, Mr. Grainger, I would love you to take that bag on board. Nothing would give me greater pleasure, but unfortunately, there's a box. There is a maximum size. So if your bag fits in the box, please take it.
Just go check.
If it doesn't, I'm sorry, we'll have to tag it and put it in the hold. So blame the box, not me, okay? And it's a tool.
Yeah.
It's a tool. By the way, actually, if you're ever at an airport and you see somebody doing that, stay and watch. Honestly, it's worth the fun because they jump on that bag, they push it in with their foot, and they're trying to jam it into this box. And believe me, once it's gone in, it is not coming out again in a hurry.
One small one that got stuck in there, and the person couldn't get it.
Yeah, I'm convinced one day I'll see somebody walking up the aircraft steps carrying their bag with the box still attached to it. But look, I digress. The point I'm trying to make,
wasn't it?
Listen, I digress. The point I'm trying to make is, if you're asking people to do something new that they haven't done before, give them some help, give them some tools to help them to do it. So, summary, where do I start when it comes to customer experience and making it happen? Number one, customer insight and the customer promise. Identify the what and get that right. And then number two, set up your organization to be able to adopt it, which comes down to that leadership, the culture, and providing them with the tool set. Then and only then can you start to embark on the journey. That's my thought.
Thank you, Hamish and Adam. I think we've given, between the three of us, very practical guidance and a way to start. So if you have joined us, just want to say thank you for joining us for this episode, but I hope you have enjoyed the whole series of competitive CX. If you do have any feedback to give to us, please do either reach us to directly or feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. And as I said in the start, if you could please take a moment, share the episode now with a colleague or a friend, especially if you think that these are very practical steps for helping colleagues to know where to start and to also help colleagues go and build competitive CX. So we just want to say thank you to all of our listeners, and we really do want to hear from you, and we wish you a good day and hope you too go and create a competitive CX with all this wealth of knowledge we've created as part of our competitive CX podcast series. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Hamish, for joining me. It's been a great session to share with yourselves and great debate around client experience. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you very much for the great idea. It's been a great experience.
Absolutely. Hugely enjoyed it. Thank you, Melanie, for being the lead on this.
Oh, great. Thank you to you both. It wouldn't have been the same without you both. Have a lovely day, everybody. Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Competitive CX, the podcast dedicated to insights for financial services professionals tackling client experience challenges. We hope you found valuable strategies for enhancing client engagement in your organization.
If you enjoyed the discussion, please subscribe to Competitive CX and leave a rating and a review. Your feedback helps us reach more finance professionals seeking to overcome their CX challenges.
And you can stay up to date with the latest in client experience by following us on LinkedIn for resources designed to help you innovate and improve financial services.
Join us next time as we continue exploring how to transform client experiences in finance. Until then, keep pushing boundaries and striving for excellence in the client experience.